Even, do not post that. Or any of my bad words. That was still incredible, yes? Holy cow. I just want to bring your attention. Reverend Lynn created this really cool bulletin, and there's a place in it for notes. So if I say anything really profound, you know, you can make notes. And for visitors, too, you can fill this out so that we can get to know you, and we can put you on our e-news blast so you know what's happening at McSizzle. And today, we have a really special insert that happened within the last 24 hours. We got really inspired. Our beloved Lucky, stand up for a second, honey, this little darling thing. She is our board member and just beloved cutie pie, and she happens to be an absolutely incredible writer. And I told her that since she got fired, I was going to use her, and I am. I'm not being mean. If you were here last week, that we explained all of that. So just listen to last week's sermon. But anyway, I asked her to write an article on our theme this month, and which she did, which I'm submitting to some magazines. But also, she did a short version, which is on the front of the insert, which is called Recipe for Creating Magic. And then I picked a practitioner, David, because I knew he could work under pressure fast. He said, you might want to give the other practitioners a little heads up on this. Yeah. And he did a spiritual mind treatment on what Lucky wrote about, so that you have something all month to refer to about what we're working. Isn't this cool? Yay. So, and Franklin, your meditation was so beautiful. And as you were talking about that oneness feeling and looking up at the night sky, it just brought me back to Monday night. I spoke about this last week, too, that on Monday nights I go to a spiritual support group that lasts for about 3 hours with just a few people. And halfway through, I decided to take little Angel for a walk, and I walked outside, and it was like that magic time, where it was just about dark, but not quite, and the stars were sparkling, and then I started seeing these little bunnies everywhere, all these little bunnies, and then these fireflies, and it was like, God, it was so magical, and it was so cool, because part of what we'd been talking about in the group was like being a spiritual wizard, and we all know what that means, because that is where that what happens prior to the manifestation is that you're playing in the realm of energy and imagination, right? And so that's what we're going to be talking about all month long as we delve into big magic. We did get some copies of this, so there are some available for you. It's Elizabeth Gilbert, who did Eat, Pray, Love. And I just adore her, and I love the way that she writes. So I'm going to be quoting some things from her today. So that's going to be our month, which is creating a life of magic, big magic. Doesn't this sound like fun? Yes. So today I'm going to talk about the courage for discovery. There was a magician, and he worked on a cruise ship. And he did a cabaret act doing magic tricks, mostly just sort of sleight of hand tricks. And he was actually pretty good at this, but he had one big problem. There was this parrot that was on the ship that every time he would get to like the magic part of it, this parrot would blow it. And he'd say things like, "It's up his sleeve, it's up his sleeve. It's in his pocket, it's in his mouth." And would ruin his magic show. And so this magician was getting pretty sick and tired of this, and he threatened to do physical harm to this little parrot if it ruined its act one more time. Well, one evening, just when the magician was going to do his big grand finale, where he was about to disappear in a puff of smoke, this cruise ship hit an iceberg. And the ship, boy, that's hard to say, ship sunk. And amazingly, the magician and the parrot were the only survivors. And the magician was laying on the driftwood, just kind of totally out of it. And he kind of was dazed and opened his eye, and he looked over and he saw that little parrot with his beady little eyes, and he could see the little wheels turning in its head. And he just kind of looked at him for a little while, and then the parrot said, "Okay, you got me this time. What did you do with the ship?" Okay. So we're not really talking about that kind of magic. We're talking about spiritual wizard kind of magic, but big magic nonetheless, and we are going to use her book as a reference. It's called Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear, so that we can explore the attitudes, approaches, and habits that we need in order to uncover our hidden treasures, face our fears, and come into who we came here to be, what the universe wants to have happen through us, and just be the magnificence that we are. So, early on in the book, Gilbert says this. She poses it as a question, so I want you to think about this. She says, "So this, I believe, is a central question from which creative living hinges. Do you have the courage to bring forth the treasures that are hidden in you?" It's a good question. And she says, "Look, I don't know what's hidden within you. You yourself may barely know, although I suspect you've caught glimpses. I don't know your capabilities, your aspirations, your longings, your secret talents, but surely something wonderful is sheltered inside you. And I say this with all confidence because I happen to believe we are all walking respiratories, is that right? Not restrooms, respiratories of buried treasure. Repositories. Okay, it was the suppository and I don't know. That was good. You know, I opened myself up and I said, "Okay, Spirit, whatever." Oh, good. Yeah, take notes on that one. Yeah. You all are just too funny. Okay. Oh, yeah, make sure that's in the video, Val. I'm sure. What did you say? Oh! Well, good, the place should fill up in no time. All right, so calm down. All right. So, how am I going to get through this? So she says, "I believe this is one of the oldest, most generous tricks the universe plays on us human beings, both for our own amusement and for ours, for its amusement and ours. The universe buries strange treasures deep within us all." See, how can I read this without all of our heads going to these terrible places? Then stands back to see if we can find them. You all should see the look on Michael's face. He just... Could I have a drink, please? Yeah. Okay, second verse. We're going to start from the second verse now. So that sentiment is consistent with the ancient Hindu story of the Creator and the angels discussing where to hide man's divinity. Okay, I just have to skip it, okay? I really do. It's just going downhill. I can't even read this next passage that she says, the universe buries strange jewels deep within us. Okay, you guys get the gist of it, and I really apologize to anyone who's new here today. Okay. Everybody take a breath with me, please. For what? Oh, okay. When we say creative living, we're not talking about exclusively pursuing the life of a poet, a musician, or an artist, which we have many of those here, but rather that hidden treasure inside you that is wonderful, that is about creative living, and is going to be in the context of our conversation this month. So it's about living a life that is driven more strongly by curiosity than by fear, and a life in which you bring forth from you that which brings you joy and fulfillment, which in turn blesses the world. Now, Gilbert gives an example of a friend of hers, Susan, who she didn't take it up. She had actually been a figure skater when she was a little girl, but gave it up because she knew she didn't have it to go all the way, so she just let it go. But she took it back up again at 40, and she writes all about this. But this morning I got a download, which seems to be happening lately. It's like I get my information the morning of what I'm actually supposed to talk about after I've already prepared. And because I have a friend, and there's a slide, because it's a beautiful example of what I'm talking about here. Now, this slide on the right there is the girls. I'm dating myself a little bit. We are in spandex. And this was an R&B Motown group that I sang with. And the woman 3 in is Patty. And she's been one of my good friends forever and ever and ever. And here she is today, Patty. Now, in the girls, I was always the really ambitious one. And Lori was too. She's on the end with that really, funny little pose. And Patty was always really scared. And we felt she was always holding us back. That she would just get meek and get scared and, was afraid for things to get too big. Well, this is like 81, okay? Here we are, 2016, and Patty started working with me a few months ago, because she's had this hidden treasure inside of her that she's wanted to bring forth, and she's never had the courage to see it through. And that is to be a writer. And I said, well, we have this program, Prosperity Plus, that is pretty cool, getting you clear on your vision and helping support you kind of work through. And if you want, I can send you the kit, and I'll coach you, call me once a week, and we'll work through it. Well, she has been diligent about this, and just walked through some fears and things like that. Well, last night, there was a message on my phone, and she's at a workshop, a writing workshop in Sedona right now as we speak. And she left this message on my phone last night, and I put the words up just so that if you can't quite understand her because she's a little bit emotional, you can at least know what she's saying.
And I called you earlier because I was really struggling with signing up for the Publish Now program that I already told you about, which is really, really expensive. But just after being in the process for as long as I was and listening to other people's experiences, I just said, fuck it, I'm going for it. And I did. So I'm signed up for a Publish Now program, and my book's going to be published, and I'm so fucking excited. And you know what? I don't think it would have happened without you. And I want you to know that. And I love you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
You know, the only thing better than somebody discovering their hidden treasure and fulfilling that is getting to help them do it. It's so beautiful. I spoke to her afterwards, and she's just on fire. She said, Dyann, I've never finished anything, and my fears have terrified me, and I'm going for it. I'm doing it. It's happening. So it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So the question this morning is, what is your buried treasure? What is that within you? And do you have the courage to discover it? Because it can be so scary. It can be so scary because living creatively means living into the unknown, and the unknown is just scary. Now, I came up with a list of about 50 things that you could be afraid of that could keep you from uncovering your buried treasure. Things like you're afraid you won't be good at whatever it is that you're being nudged to do. You're afraid you'll be rejected, criticized, ridiculed, misunderstood, or worst of all, ignored. You're afraid there's no market for what you're offering, and there's no point in pursuing it. You're afraid somebody else already did it better. You're afraid everybody else already did it better. You're afraid somebody will steal your ideas, so you're going to keep them hidden in the dark. You're afraid you won't be taken seriously. You're afraid you'll be embarrassed. You're afraid that someday you'll look back on your endeavors and it'll all have been a waste of time, a waste of money. And you're afraid you don't have the right kind of discipline. You're afraid you don't have the kind of work ethic. You're afraid you're too fat. You're afraid you're too thin. You're afraid you're going to... I mean, it never ends, right? You guys could be yelling them out all day at me, what these fears are. It's nonstop. So we're just going to stop. We know it's scary. But here's a really important thought. Our fears are really boring. They're boring. It never changes. It never delights. It never offers a surprise twist or an unexpected ending. Fear is a song with one note, only one word, full volume, endless loop. Stop! Stop. It is like the resistor. There's nothing interesting or compelling about it. On the other hand, we have within us creativity that is untapped. We are all original. We have original personalities, different perspectives, different things that we can bring forth that nobody else can. But our fears are not original at all. And so Gilbert asks us, do you really want to build your lives around the most boring aspect of your life? Glad you like that. Now, this doesn't mean your fear will go away. Bravery means doing something scary. And the truth is we need our fear, right? I mean, it's there for a purpose. It's there for our survival if we come upon a big lion or something like that. Ernest Holmes said, fear brings failure. It's just that simple. So just because you don't need fear doesn't mean it won't show up, especially when you're trying something new. Your fear will always be triggered by new endeavors, whatever they might look like. And Gilbert suggests that you make fear your companion on your journey of creating magic in your life, because you need to remember love includes all. So make a space for it. I love, love, love what she writes. This letter. Well, she says this first. It isn't always easy or comfortable on this road trip with fear, but it's always worth it, because if you can't learn to travel comfortably alongside your fear, then you'll never be able to go anywhere interesting or do anything interesting. And that would be a pity, because your life is short and rare and amazing and miraculous, and you want to do amazing things. There are hidden treasures inside of you, extraordinary treasures, and bringing those treasures to light takes work and faith and focus and courage and devotion, and the clock is ticking and the world is spinning, and we simply do not have the time anymore to think so small. Right? Yeah. So what do we do when we're faced with our fear? Faced with the fear of trying to discover our buried treasure? Holmes says, let us fill ourselves with such courage and power of strength that all thought of weakness flees before us. If any thought of weakness should come up, ask this question: is life weak? If life is not weak, and if God is not weak, then you aren't, and you never were, and you never will be. I should like to see the sickly, discouraged thought that would withstand the attitude of mind that I am this strength. I and the Father are one, and all things can happen, are infinite possibility. Holmes is telling us to remember who we are, which is what we talked about last week. Your true, authentic self, powerful, magnificent spiritual beings. Now, if you go back to your childhood of when you felt most alive and free, and those impulses, those will give you some clues of that buried treasure. I was thinking that, I always loved being on stage. I loved that. And I loved making people laugh. And I love the spiritual path, learning and growing and sharing and watching people. I love connection. That's what I want to have happen here, that is happening here, that feels so good. It's like I want to connect my heart and just outpour love to you and feel you loving it back and with each other and just feel that energy of this place. And I was thinking back to when I was 8, I think when I first discovered, that I loved the stage, we had a big picture window in our house. And I had gotten this red Christmas robe. And I had an older sister, 4 years older than me. And there were 3 boys that lived across the street that were her age and a few years older. And they were sitting on their front step, these 3 really cute boys and my older sister, who I thought was mean. And I got out of the bath in my new red robe, and we had this big picture window. And I just spontaneously started doing this little dance across the picture window. Well, I had a blast, and I thought it was really funny, and it was pretty intriguing too. My sister, of course, the other joy of getting to perform was watching my sister completely humiliated by her little sister. And she used that for years. If you don't do this for me, I'm going to tell Mom and Dad you did, But that instinct of just loving, I mean, I'm not going to do that, okay? But I am, sorta. I am, sorta. Because I want to be that authentic for real. I want to be that naked. And I want you to also. Because that's when you will uncover, and start living into your potential, which is amazing. I can't wait to see what all happens in your lives. I can't tell you how much listening to Patty's message meant to me. It was just like so beautiful, so beautiful. So I'm going to close with this letter that Elizabeth Gilbert wrote to her fear. And this could be a good exercise. She says, "Dearest fear, creativity and I are about to go on a road trip together. I understand you'll be joining us because you always do. I acknowledge that you believe you have an important job to do in my life, and I like it that you take your job so seriously. Apparently, your job is to induce complete panic whenever I'm about to do anything interesting, and may I say, you're superb at your job. So by all means, keep doing your job if you feel you must. But I will also be doing my job on the road trip, which is to bring faith and focus and courage and devotion to all my work. And creativity will be doing its job too, which is to remain stimulating and inspiring. There's plenty of room in this vehicle for all of us, so make yourself at home. But understand this. Creativity and I are the only ones who will be making any decisions along the way. I recognize and respect that you are a part of this family, and so I will never exclude you from our activities, but still, your suggestions will never be followed. You're allowed to have a seat, you're allowed to have a voice, but you are not allowed to have a vote. You're not allowed to touch the road maps. You're not allowed to suggest detours. You're not allowed to fiddle with the temperature, dude, and you are not even allowed to touch the radio. But above all else, my dearest old familiar friend, you are absolutely forbidden to drive. So remember, you have hidden treasures within you, extraordinary treasures. Bringing these treasures to light is what you came here to do, and the clock is ticking, and the world is spinning, and you simply do not have time anymore to think small. It is what God in you, as you, through you, wants for you. So I affirm, knowing that, believing that, you have the courage not only to discover, but to express your beautiful buried treasure, and so it is. It's time to give